The skipper wanted me to be skipper if anything happened to the skipper. And I'm gonna skipper because that's the way the skipper wanted it.
What you want most.
I would like a world without strife, universal harmony, international goodwill.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for that sincere, unselfish, and unrehearsed speech.
I'm not overweight. I just have big bones.
And they're covered with big meat.
Most fans miss these secret details from Gilligan's Island, from the power lines running through supposedly deserted island shots.
Operator, wait, listen to me. We're shipwrecked, you see, and we found this telephone line and we tapped into it. And we're on a deserted island, there's no telephone booth or even a phone.
To the lagoon that mysteriously changed locations between episodes.
Why don't you catch something really big for dinner?
You bet, skipper. I'll go get the big... Look.
The mine!
The mistakes were everywhere once you knew to look for them. But the real secrets weren't just production errors. They were the tensions between cast members and the dysfunction behind the scenes that eventually killed the show and left most of the cast unable to escape their characters for the rest of their lives. So let's get into it. Gilligan's Island featured a lagoon where the castaways kept their boats and filmed many water scenes. The problem was that the lagoon appeared to be in different locations depending on which episode you were watching. Sometimes it was surrounded by dense jungle. Other episodes showed it near open beach. The background changed so frequently that paying attention to continuity became impossible.
Reel it in. Do you think you can handle it? Oh, believe me, for this kind of fishing, I've got the right kind of bait.
The production filmed at different locations depending on what was convenient at the time. They used the CBS Studio Center backlot for most scenes. But when they needed water scenes, they'd film at various California locations that didn't match each other. Nobody seemed concerned that audiences might notice the lagoon morphing between episodes. The boat in the lagoon also changed appearance constantly. The SS Minnow appeared damaged differently in various episodes. Sometimes it was partially submerged. Other times it sat higher in the water. The mast would be broken in one scene and intact in the next with no explanation for how the castaways might have repaired it. Fans who watched the show in syndication, seeing episodes out of order repeatedly, started noticing these inconsistencies. The lagoon problem became one of the most discussed bloopers among people who paid attention to background details. But during the original run, when episodes aired once and disappeared, most viewers didn't catch the changing scenery. The location inconsistencies extended beyond just the lagoon. The jungle around the camp changed density and appearance. Trees visible in establishing shots would vanish in closer scenes. The island itself seemed to shift and reshape itself depending on what the script required. Production designers later admitted they weren't particularly concerned with continuity. Gilligan's Island was a broad comedy where the premise itself was absurd. If audiences accepted that 7 people could be stranded with unlimited luggage and perfect hair, they'd probably forgive some geographical inconsistencies. While the lagoon was moving mysteriously, something even more obvious was appearing in shots that should have shown nothing but wilderness. Gilligan's Island took place on a deserted island with no modern infrastructure. The castaways had to build everything from scratch and lived without electricity or connections to civilization. Except viewers who looked carefully at background shots could see power lines running through the supposedly uninhabited jungle. The power lines appeared in multiple episodes. They'd be visible in the distance during outdoor scenes. Clearly modern electrical infrastructure that had no business being on a deserted island. Sometimes telephone poles were visible too, which made the island's isolation seem significantly less impressive. The crew tried to frame shots to avoid showing the power lines, but the limited filming locations made that difficult. When scenes required wide shots showing the scope of the island, the power lines would inevitably appear in frame. Editors could have caught these mistakes, but the pace of television production meant episodes went to air with obvious modern elements visible in supposedly primitive settings.
I'm sorry, I cannot keep this line open.
Operator, wait, listen to me. We're shipwrecked, you see, and we found this telephone line and we tapped into it. And we're on a deserted island, there's no telephone booth or even a phone.
The power line problem extended to other modern intrusions. Cars were occasionally visible in distant shots. Paved roads appeared where there should have been only jungle. The deserted island was clearly a California backlot that production didn't always successfully disguise as a remote tropical location. Some fans theorized that the visible power lines were intentional, suggesting that Gilligan's Island was actually a commentary on the artificiality of television. That interpretation gave the show more credit for deliberate artistic choices than it probably deserved. More likely, the power lines were just mistakes that nobody caught or cared enough to fix. The casual attitude toward continuity and realism reflected television production standards of the 1960s. Shows filmed quickly with limited budgets. Perfection was less important than getting episodes completed on schedule. While power lines were accidentally revealing the show's fakery, other mistakes were creating questions about the professor's abilities. The professor built a radio from coconuts and bamboo in an early episode. The radio became a running plot device, allowing the castaways to hear news from the outside world. The problem was that the radio's capabilities changed dramatically depending on what the script needed. Sometimes it could only receive broadcasts. Other times it could transmit. The inconsistencies suggested either the professor was a terrible engineer or the writers didn't bother tracking what the radio could actually do.
Professor, I don't see how a smack in the jaw could turn him into a radio.
Well, he's not a radio skipper. He's merely a simple form of receiver.
The radio appeared and disappeared based on plot convenience. Episodes would go by without any mention of the device. Then suddenly it would reappear when the castaways needed to hear important news. No explanation was given for where the radio was being kept or why they weren't using it constantly to call for help. The radio's range also varied wildly. Some episodes suggested it could only pick up local Hawaiian stations. Other episodes had the castaways listening to news from around the world. The professor apparently built a radio that could selectively receive whatever information the script required, regardless of what was technically possible.
Open, Gilligan.
This is station KALU, Honolulu, the voice of Pineapple.
Close. Not too unusual a situation. That's happened a number of times.
The power source for the radio was never adequately explained. The professor claimed to be using fruit batteries or pedal power, but the radio worked consistently enough to provide plot-relevant information whenever needed, which suggested a power supply far more reliable than coconuts should have provided. Fans who thought too hard about the professor's inventions started noticing he could build incredibly complex devices from island materials, but somehow couldn't fix a boat. He constructed bicycles, generators, and various machines that required precision engineering. But patching the SS Minnow remained beyond his capabilities for 3 seasons. The radio's unreliability as a plot device reflected broader issues with how Gilligan's Island treated its own internal logic. Rules existed only until they became inconvenient, at which point they were ignored or contradicted without acknowledgement. The show operated on cartoon physics where anything was possible if it served the comedy. While the professor's radio was defying logic, the castaways' clothing was creating its own set of impossible situations. The castaways were supposed to have been on a 3-hour tour when they got stranded. Yet throughout the series, they had access to unlimited clothing, makeup, and personal items that nobody could have packed for a short afternoon boat ride. Ginger had evening gowns. Mrs. Howell had jewelry. Everyone had multiple outfit changes per episode. The clothing situation was particularly absurd for Ginger. She dressed like she was heading to Hollywood premieres rather than being stranded on a deserted island.
And that's tough.
I don't see how you can exercise anyway in that dress. It's so tight. I'm surprised it doesn't...
Her wardrobe included sequined dresses, high heels, and outfits that required significant maintenance and storage. The idea that she'd brought all this for a 3-hour tour stretched credibility beyond the breaking point.
Come in.
Marianne's clothing was slightly more practical, but still suspiciously extensive. She had multiple sets of her signature gingham shirts and shorts.
When fishing for boys, the proper bait is girls.
The outfit stayed clean and well-maintained despite the castaways having limited access to soap or laundry facilities. Everyone looked fresh and pressed, even while supposedly roughing it in the wilderness. The professor somehow had multiple identical outfits. His uniform of white shirt and khakis appeared in every episode, looking freshly laundered. Either he'd packed dozens of the same outfit for a 3-hour tour, or island life was significantly less dirty than reality would suggest. Gilligan's wardrobe created its own problems. His red shirt and blue pants became iconic, but the show never explained how he kept them in good condition. The clothing should have been shredded and stained within weeks of outdoor island life. Instead, Gilligan looked the same in the final episode as he did in the first. The skipper's shirt strained credibility in a different way. His weight fluctuated throughout the series, but his clothing always fit perfectly regardless of whether he'd gained or lost significant pounds between episodes. The magic expanding wardrobe kept him comfortable through all his physical changes.
Professor, he's in terrible shape, just terrible. His hand is out like this, and he walks all bent over. Like this.
The unlimited luggage extended beyond clothing. The castaways had books, games, and various personal items that appeared when plot required them. While the clothing situation was creating questions, the background of shots was revealing even more problematic details. Gilligan's Island episodes occasionally featured crew members accidentally visible in shots. Shadows of camera operators would appear on the ground during outdoor scenes. Boom microphones would dip into frame during indoor dialogue. The mistakes were obvious to anyone paying attention, but apparently not concerning enough to warrant reshoots. One particularly noticeable incident showed a crew member's legs visible in the background of a jungle scene. The person was standing behind foliage that didn't quite hide them completely. The shot made it to air with the crew member's presence completely unacknowledged, suggesting either the editors missed it or the production schedule didn't allow time for fixing such errors.
I can't find the girls or the Howells anyplace.
Well, they must be somewhere in the vicinity.
Yeah, I saw 8 of them will go about a half an hour.
Microphone shadows appeared frequently throughout the series. Scenes filmed in bright sunlight would show the distinctive boom shadow crossing actors' faces or the ground at their feet. The shadows moved as the boom operator adjusted position, making it obvious these weren't shadows from trees or other environmental sources. Camera equipment was occasionally visible in reflective surfaces. Scenes filmed inside the castaways' huts would sometimes show camera or crew reflections in glass or metal objects. The mistakes were brief enough that casual viewers might miss them, but they were there for anyone who watched carefully. The casual approach to these production errors reflected the television standards of the 1960s. Shows produced multiple episodes simultaneously with quick turnaround times. Perfection was impossible under those conditions. If crew members occasionally wandered into frame or equipment showed up in shots, that was an acceptable casualty of the production schedule.
Skipper? Hey, did you get your invitation?
I did not.
Oh, I think that's terrible.
Modern shows reshoot scenes or use digital effects to remove crew members and equipment from shots. But Gilligan's Island operated in an era where such corrections weren't possible or practical. Once an episode was filmed and edited, that's what audiences got regardless of mistakes. The visible crew members became part of the show's unintentional charm, evidence of a looser era in television production. While crew members were accidentally appearing on camera, the actors themselves were dealing with dynamics that affected how scenes played out. Tina Louise played Ginger Grant, the movie star stranded on the island.
I got goosebumps all over just watching your masterful marksman.
Louise hated being on Gilligan's Island. She'd been told the show would focus on her character, making it a vehicle for her career. Instead, it became an ensemble comedy where she was just one of 7 castaways. The disappointment made Louise difficult to work with and eventually led to her refusing to participate in reunion movies.
I thought it was going to just last 6 months, but it seemed to go on forever.
Louise's frustration showed in how she approached the role. She gave solid performances, but made it clear she didn't consider Gilligan's Island worthy of her talents. The disdain created tension with other cast members who were grateful for steady work and didn't appreciate Louise's attitude about being too good for the show. The ensemble nature of Gilligan's Island meant no single character dominated episodes. Louise wanted Ginger to be the star, but scripts distributed screen time relatively evenly among the 7 castaways. Louise viewed this as a betrayal of what she'd been promised when she signed on. By the time reunion movies were being produced in the 1970s and 1980s, Louise was done with Gilligan's Island completely. She refused to participate in the TV movies that brought back the other original cast members. Her absence was explained with various plot devices, but the real reason was simply that Louise wanted nothing to do with the show that had defined her career in ways she resented. Louise's refusal to embrace Gilligan's Island stood in stark contrast to how other cast members handled the show's legacy. Bob Denver, Dawn Wells and the rest appeared at fan conventions and participated in reunions enthusiastically. Louise stayed away, maintaining that the show had damaged her career rather than helped it. The irony was that Gilligan's Island had indeed defined Louise's career, just not in the way she'd hoped. She'd wanted to be a dramatic actress, but would forever be remembered as Ginger. Fighting against that legacy only made her seem bitter, while her castmates, who'd embraced it, became beloved by fans. While Louise was making her disdain clear, other cast members were dealing with different struggles. Bob Denver played Gilligan, the clumsy first mate who caused most of the castaways' problems.
Oh, wait, operator. Hey, I got an operator in San Diego.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to deposit another.
Denver became the show's breakout star, which gave him leverage with producers that he used to help his fellow cast members rather than boost his own career. The original opening credits for Gilligan's Island listed Bob Denver and Alan Hale Jr. as the stars, with the other cast members relegated to "and the rest" without individual names. Dawn Wells and Russell Johnson, who played Mary Ann and the Professor, weren't specifically credited despite being major parts of every episode. Denver considered this unfair and used his star power to change it. He threatened to walk away from the show unless the credits were revised to name all 7 cast members individually. The producers didn't want to lose their title character, so they agreed. The opening credits were refilmed to include everyone's names, giving Wells and Johnson the recognition they deserved.
With Gilligan, the skipper too, the millionaire and his wife.
Denver's intervention demonstrated unusual solidarity in an industry where actors typically focused on their own careers. He'd achieved success and chose to use it to help others rather than negotiate better terms for himself. The gesture made him beloved among his castmates and created genuine affection on set. The revised credits became one of the most recognizable opening sequences in television history. The sing-along quality of naming all 7 castaways helped Gilligan's Island become a cultural touchstone. Denver's insistence on including everyone contributed to that legacy. Denver's generosity extended beyond just the credits. He advocated for his fellow cast members in other ways throughout the show's run. When producers wanted to cut certain characters' screen time or storylines, Denver pushed back. He understood that the ensemble nature of the show was part of what made it work. The loyalty Denver showed created a mostly harmonious set, despite the usual pressures of television production. Most cast members got along well, partly because Denver set a tone of mutual support rather than competition. While Denver was building camaraderie, the show's premise was creating logical problems that writers couldn't solve. The central premise of Gilligan's Island was that 7 people were stranded on a deserted island after their boat was damaged in a storm. The show lasted 3 seasons, during which the professor demonstrated the ability to build complex machines from island materials. Yet somehow, the boat remained unfixed the entire time, and the show never adequately explained why. The SS Minnow's damage varied depending on which episode you watched. Sometimes it appeared partially sunk. Other episodes showed it relatively intact. The inconsistency made it unclear how badly damaged the boat actually was, and whether repairs were even necessary or just complicated. The professor built bicycles, generators, radios, and various other devices that required significant engineering knowledge. But he apparently couldn't figure out how to patch a boat that was small enough to have been offering 3-hour tours. The selective competence made sense for keeping the show going, but not much else.
All right, Gilligan, start pumping the projector. Oh, noisy projector.
Several episodes featured the castaways nearly escaping the island through various means. They'd build rafts or signal planes or find ways to communicate with the outside world. But something always went wrong, usually because of Gilligan's incompetence, resetting the status quo for the next episode. The boat problem also highlighted broader questions about the island itself. If the island was close enough to civilization that radio signals reached it regularly, why did rescue ships never stumble across it? If it was truly remote, how did the professor's coconut radio pick up news broadcasts? The geography made sense only if you didn't think about it too hard.
Blue! Skipper, telephone wires just don't work that way. Now, the key to the pattern seems...
Fans developed elaborate theories to explain why the castaways remained trapped. Some suggested they didn't actually want to leave. Others proposed that the island had some supernatural property that prevented escape. The reality was simpler. The boat couldn't be fixed because fixing it would end the show. The professor's inability to fix the boat became one of the show's most mocked aspects. Jokes about his selective genius appeared in pop culture references to Gilligan's Island for decades. While the boat stayed mysteriously unfixable, the show's treatment of women was creating problems. Gilligan's Island was canceled after 3 seasons in 1967. The cancellation came suddenly and was partly attributed to a controversial scene that crossed lines the network hadn't anticipated. The scene involved Ginger in a revealing outfit that was considered too suggestive for family television.
These tests.
Oh, you just don't know how desperately I want to breathe the heady wine.
The costume department dressed Tina Louise in an outfit that showed more skin than usual for 1960s television standards. The scene aired and immediately generated complaints from viewers who felt the show had become inappropriate for children. Network executives, already considering whether to renew Gilligan's Island for a 4th season, used the controversy as justification to cancel. The decision to cancel was also financial. Gilligan's Island was expensive to produce because of its outdoor filming locations and elaborate sets. The show's ratings were decent, but not spectacular. When controversy gave the network an excuse to end the series, they took it. The cast learned about the cancellation through the press rather than from the network directly. They'd been expecting to return for a 4th season and were already planning storylines when news broke that the show was done. The abrupt ending left them shocked and unemployed without warning. The final episode wasn't written as a series finale. It was just another episode in what the cast assumed would be an ongoing series. The lack of closure frustrated fans who'd invested 3 seasons in watching the castaways try to get home. The show simply ended with everyone still stranded on the island. The cancellation proved controversial in itself. Fans protested the decision, arguing that one scene shouldn't doom an entire series. But in the conservative television climate of the 1960s, the network wasn't willing to risk further controversy by continuing a show that had crossed perceived boundaries. Years later, cast members disputed whether the controversial scene was really the reason for cancellation. Some believed the network had already decided to end the show and used the scene as convenient justification. While the show was ending amid controversy, the actors were about to discover that life after Gilligan's Island came with its own challenges. Getting cast on Gilligan's Island gave the actors steady work and decent paychecks for 3 seasons. But it also typecast them so severely that building careers afterward became nearly impossible for most of them. Casting directors couldn't see past their island personas. Bob Denver found the typecasting particularly frustrating. He'd been an actor with range before Gilligan's Island, playing Maynard G. Krebs on The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. But after 3 seasons as Gilligan, that's all anyone could see.
Know what I bought?
It wasn't clothes, that's for sure.
Oh, who needs clothes?
You do.
Denver auditioned for dramatic roles and couldn't book them because directors only saw the bumbling first mate. Dawn Wells faced similar problems. Mary Ann was wholesome and sweet, which made Wells seem appropriate only for similar roles. When she tried to audition for anything edgier or more complex, casting directors dismissed her. She was Mary Ann, and Mary Ann was all she could be in Hollywood's eyes. Russell Johnson struggled with the professor label. He was a trained actor who'd appeared in serious films before Gilligan's Island. After the show, he was offered only scientists or intellectual roles, always variations on the professor character. The typecasting limited his range severely. Alan Hale Jr. had the easiest time post-Gilligan's Island because his career had been built on playing similar characters before the show. The skipper wasn't drastically different from other roles he'd done, so the typecasting didn't feel as restrictive. But it still limited what kinds of parts he could get. Tina Louise's fears about being typecast as Ginger proved entirely correct. She'd wanted to be a serious dramatic actress, and instead became known primarily for playing a movie star on a sitcom. Her refusal to embrace the role didn't help her escape it. Jim Backus and Natalie Schafer, who played the Howells, were character actors who'd had long careers before Gilligan's Island. The typecasting affected them less severely because they were older and had established reputations. While the actors were struggling with typecasting, one cast member was dealing with health problems. Dawn Wells played Mary Ann, the wholesome farm girl who became a fan favorite despite being part of and the rest in the original credits. Wells embraced her Gilligan's Island legacy more fully than most of her castmates, appearing at conventions and in reunions enthusiastically.
Oh, she's wonderful.
But the financial rewards of that fame didn't last. Wells struggled financially in her later years, despite having been on a successful television series. The residuals from Gilligan's Island weren't substantial because of how television contracts worked in the 1960s. Cast members didn't earn ongoing money from syndication the way modern actors do from successful shows. The typecasting that prevented Wells from getting substantial acting work after Gilligan's Island meant she never built the kind of career that would have provided financial security. She did regional theater, small television roles, and convention appearances. None of it paid particularly well, but it was what was available to someone known primarily as Mary Ann. In 2018, Wells revealed she was facing financial difficulties after experiencing health problems that created significant medical debt.
The beloved actress, known for playing castaway Mary Ann, is broke and in desperate need of help, according to her longtime friend and hairstylist, Doug Kirkpatrick. He set up this GoFundMe page, Help Dawn Wells. Dawn needs $194,000 to alleviate penalties by the IRS.
The revelation shocked fans who assumed that being on a beloved television series meant Wells had financial stability. The reality was much less secure. Wells's fans rallied to support her, creating fundraisers to help with her expenses. The outpouring demonstrated how much affection audiences had for Mary Ann and for Wells herself. But it also highlighted how little the entertainment industry protects actors once their moment of fame passes. Wells continued working and appearing at events as long as her health allowed. She remained grateful for Gilligan's Island and for the fans who'd supported her through difficult times. Her attitude stood in stark contrast to Tina Louise's resentment of the show. Wells died in December 2020 from complications related to COVID-19. She was 82 years old. Her death came during the pandemic when normal memorial services and tributes were impossible. The financial struggles Wells faced in her final years sparked conversations about how television residuals work. While Wells was dealing with money problems, another cast member was finding unexpected late career success. Gilligan's Island spawned 3 reunion movies in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Rescue from Gilligan's Island aired in 1978, followed by The Castaways on Gilligan's Island in 1979, and The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island in 1981. All 3 were exactly as bad as those titles suggest. The reunion movies served primarily as nostalgia cash-ins rather than legitimate attempts to continue the story. The plots were thin excuses to get the cast back together and remind audiences of the original show. Rescue from Gilligan's Island finally got the castaways off the island, only to have them get shipwrecked on the same island again by the end of the movie.
And are you going to do any more reunion shows? Is that in the cards?
We have another 2-hour script for, TV movie that Sherwood's written, and it's Gilligan, the Second Generation.
Tina Louise refused to participate in any of the reunion movies, maintaining her stance that she was done with Gilligan's Island forever. Judith Baldwin replaced her as Ginger in the first reunion movie, and Constance Forsland played the role in the later films. The replacements were noticeable and reminded viewers that not everyone from the original cast was willing to return. The movies acknowledged that significant time had passed since the series ended. The actors had aged, which made sense given that over a decade had elapsed between the show's cancellation and the first reunion movie. But the movies tried to maintain the same tone and humor as the original series, which didn't quite work with older actors reprising younger roles. The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island represented the nadir of the reunion movies. The plot involved the basketball team visiting the island for reasons that made no sense, and the resulting movie was a bizarre mashup of 2 properties that had no business being combined. Despite the low quality, the reunion movies attracted decent television audiences. Nostalgia for the original series was strong enough that viewers tuned in, even though the movies were obviously inferior to what they remembered. The cast members who participated in the reunion movies did so partly for the paycheck and partly for the chance to work together again. The bonds they'd formed during the original series made reuniting appealing even when the material wasn't particularly good. While the reunion movies were exploiting nostalgia, the original series was teaching a new generation about its mistakes. Gilligan's Island aired in an era when audiences watched episodes once when they broadcast and maybe caught occasional reruns. The mistakes and continuity errors that exist throughout the series weren't particularly noticeable under those viewing conditions. But modern technology changed everything. Home video releases in the 1980s and 1990s allowed fans to watch episodes repeatedly and in order. Suddenly, the continuity problems became obvious. The moving lagoon, the changing boat damage, and the inconsistent island geography were impossible to miss when watching episodes back to back. The internet amplified the mistake finding exponentially. Fans created websites cataloging every blooper and continuity error in Gilligan's Island. Online communities dedicated themselves to finding and documenting mistakes that casual viewers might never notice. The collaborative nature of internet fandom meant that even tiny errors were eventually discovered and shared. High-definition transfers made the mistakes even more visible. The power lines that were barely noticeable in standard definition broadcasts became glaringly obvious in HD crew members who'd been shadows in the background of shots were now clearly visible. The improved picture quality that was supposed to make the show look better instead highlighted all its flaws. Streaming services gave Gilligan's Island yet another life, introducing the show to audiences who weren't alive when it originally aired. These new viewers approached the show differently than original audiences had, watching it as a cultural artifact rather than just entertainment. They noticed the mistakes and discussed them online, adding to the accumulated knowledge about the show's production errors. The mistakes became part of Gilligan's Island's charm, rather than detractors from its quality. Modern audiences understand that the show was made quickly on a limited budget without the production tools that contemporary shows have. The errors are evidence of a different era in television production. The cast members who lived to see this internet era had mixed feelings about the intense scrutiny of their work. Some found it amusing that people cared enough about Gilligan's Island to catalog every mistake. Others were defensive, pointing out that they'd made the show under difficult conditions without knowing people would be analyzing it frame by frame decades later. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.